Hype is a funny thing. It can either propel excellent games into the stratosphere or create expectation that's practically impossible to live up to. Enter Gears of War, arguably the most anticipated Xbox 360 game on Microsoft's docket. We already know it's one of the best-looking console games in existence, and we know that it's incredibly violent. What's left to answer is whether all the pieces come together to create a seamless picture, or if it's just another cog in the machine. Times are hard on the planet Sarah. Humanity has come under siege from an underground alien menace called the Locust, and losing the war means extinction. When the chips are down, the human coalition calls upon a traitor, Marcus Phoenix, to lead the charge.
Shit.
You plant your feet firmly in his boots for the duration of the game, as he and his squad mates attempt to give our species one last chance. What follows is a 36-hour trip through a post-apocalyptic urban wasteland, and eventually underground, where Phoenix and squad attempt to detonate a device that will wipe Sarah of the Locust Scourge from the inside out. This sci-fi setup has been done 100 times in 100 different ways, and Marcus and his motley crew aren't exactly the most charismatic group, making it difficult to build a bond with them.
This bullshit.
But it's more than enough to tie together the vicious battles that permeate the game, and the muculent locusts give you plenty of motivation to win the fight.
Let's do this.
At first glance, Gears of War appears to be a shoot first, think second kind of game. It's not. Taking cover is essential if you want to survive more than a couple of minutes. You've seen these duck and shoot mechanics at play in plenty of other games, but never one as visceral or violent as Gears. The health system is set up similarly to that of industry juggernaut Halo. You have a shield, and when it's depleted, you die. However, taking cover will allow it to replenish, adding a nice cat and mouse aesthetic to the proceedings. The twist is that your squad mates can be downed, a period of time where they're slowly bleeding out, awaiting death. If you can reach them during this vulnerable time, you can revive them. Take too long, and the Locust will finish them off, and you'll be starting back at one of the game's plentiful checkpoints.
Come get me.
As you might guess, weapons are essential to survival in Gears of War, and the arsenal on offer does not disappoint. There are 4 different munition types you can have on you at all times, and if you find an armament that you'd rather wield, you have to drop the weapon from that class. It adds some strategy to the mix, and the game does an excellent job of supplying you with the hardware you need to get the job done. There are the typical machine guns, shotguns, rocket launchers, and pistols, but what would a sci-fi game be without some out-of-this-world guns? Gears of War has plenty. The Hammer of Dawn allows you to mark a target, and a laser beam will come down from the heavens and fry them. This is especially useful for the larger creatures, and there are plenty of those. The only caveat is that you have to be outside to use it. There's also a bow with exploding arrows, but the weapon is far too archaic for a game that's supposed to be set in the future. In addition to the single-player quest, which will take an average player around 8 hours to blast through, you can play the entire game cooperatively, both online and off. In this option, players can revive each other once downed, and jump right in at any point simply by plugging in a controller. It's a great way to extend the life of the game, and will undoubtedly become a huge hit when you return from the pub with your buddies. So while the single-player campaign can basically be finished in one sitting for the dedicated, what will keep Gears of War inside your 360 for months to come is the multiplayer. Only 8 players can slug it out at once, but the game has been designed entirely around this number, so there's very little downtime. In fact, the maps are really what make this mode. They're very cleverly designed with the right weapons in the right spots to make sure things are nice and balanced. One thing that isn't particularly balanced is the chainsaw bayonet that's attached to the standard issue assault rifle. After a few hours playing multiplayer, you'll realize that it's easily the most lethal weapon in the arsenal. Once you've locked onto someone and started sawing, they can't escape. However, it takes a couple of seconds before the chainsaw will start doing its bidding, and smart players can interrupt it with a burst of machine gun fire. So eventually, multiplayer matches boil down to a lot of luck as players randomly switch between the chainsaw and machine gun, hoping for the easy kill. Who gets the saw started first is a roll of the dice a lot of the times. The multiplayer modes are fairly typical, but fun nonetheless. You have the standard last man standing, assassination where each team has a leader that must be protected, and execution where each player must be finished with either a head stomp or a chainsaw. Of course, you also get the typical deathmatch fare, and downloadable content is sure to come in the near future. Despite the quirks with the chainsaw bayonet, the multiplayer options are a ton of gory fun. And while the single-player campaign isn't as long as we'd hoped, the co-op remedies the situation a great deal. Since taking cover is such a huge part of the game, the way it works ultimately determines whether Gears of War is fun or frustrating. The A button will become your best friend as it controls every aspect of cover. Press it, and your character will slap his back against the wall and remain there until the button's pressed again. Once locked onto that wall, you can slide your character to the edge of what you're hiding behind. At this point, you can blind fire or hold the left trigger to peek around the corner and take some well-targeted over-the-shoulder shots. Moving from one cover spot to another is what really makes Gears of War different from other games of its ilk. If you hold right or left on the analog stick and tap the A button, your character will automatically perform a barrel roll and take cover at the next position. Likewise, you can hold forward and press A, and he'll advance and take cover. It works great when you're in a standard controlled situation, but it can also cause problems when things get hectic. The A button also controls barrel rolls when you're freely running, which comes in handy when you're trying to escape some serious heat, but a lot of times you'll attempt an evasive roll and end up locking onto an object and taking cover, making you a sitting duck. This can be especially frustrating in the multiplayer modes. Additionally, holding down the A button will make your character sprint. The animation and camera work for this is simply incredible, but it obscures your view of anything in front of you. Not only is it unrealistic, it can also result in your character becoming a pile of bones. While we appreciate the attempt to simplify things, so many actions on one button always causes some issues. When you're not hiding behind something, you have no aiming reticle whatsoever, and the weapons fire so erratically that they're basically worthless aside from the shotgun. It encourages players to follow the predetermined rules of the game, and makes things incredibly frantic and unpredictable when you're out in the open. The reload system works a lot like a golf swing meter, allowing you to increase the damage of your weapons for a short time. It's a nice touch that shows the attention to detail that permeates the entire game. Many of the missions revolve around rescuing other squads, or otherwise getting from point A to point B. You'll pilot a vehicle during one stage, and follow paths of light in another, but otherwise the objectives are very straightforward. Gears of War is what we like to call a cattle chute, meaning it escorts you down a predetermined track, making it practically impossible to get lost, but also losing a little bit of freedom in the process. At certain points in the game, you'll be asked to choose between two paths. While these sections aren't especially long, they do provide incentive for multiple playthroughs in conjunction with hidden cog tags that unlock various achievements. No matter where you go, there are no load times whatsoever, as Gears seamlessly streams the exquisitely detailed environments. Grandiose, scripted events take place regularly, and tapping on the Y button at any time will center Marcus's attention on what's most important. There are also some extremely simple squad commands that you can issue, but they're only needed to get through the game's harder difficulty settings. For lack of a better phrase, the gameplay in Gears of War will keep you on the edge of your seat, primarily because the enemy AI is so impressive. Just like the Halo series, you'll see the same 4 or 5 enemy types over and over, but their intelligence and ability to navigate the environment makes each battle feel completely fresh. Sure, the mission objectives are typical, and there's not much freedom, but it manages to capture the most important aspect of any video game: pure, unadulterated fun. Gears of War is fairly short, and with no vehicles in the multiplayer, its overall longevity could become an issue without adequate post-launch support. But what is here is some of the best gaming to be had this year. The attention to detail from the heat waves that emanate from discharged weapons to the ultra-gory executions help it to ascend above the status quo. It borrows many ideas from other games, but manages to perfect almost all of them. It's all the little things that add up to make Gears of War an experience like no other, and one that every adult with an Xbox 360 would be a fool not to experience.
I guess your ass is doomed, huh? No more favors, asshole.